Welcome to Cash Content and Chaos, hosted by Katherine Studley. This is the podcast where we talk tax news, current events, the spicy industry, and interview people who actually have something interesting to say. New look, same chaos. Let's get into it. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cash Content and Chaos. This is our first episode back after tax season. I have been in a state of rest and gratitude for the last 5 days. This was by far our strongest tax season ever, with our most clients ever, and our strongest team ever. And it's been such a unique and beautiful experience because, as I talk about all the time, this is an idea that I just had when I was locked by myself during the pandemic. Like a little idea, a little glitter just sprinkled down right in front of me. And that was to do taxes for OnlyFans models, which then expanded into dancers, sugar babies, and now all of sex work. And now anyone who's just looking to not be judged by their accountant. And it's been just such a most beautiful and unique experience. So super grateful. And now we are pivoting to really Q2. We're a couple of weeks behind, but we have some things up our sleeves. I'm still developing the app, but the thing is, as we get busy with deadlines, the tech changes. AI keeps getting better. All of these design softwares keeps getting better. So we do have a prototype. We are closer than ever, just kind of putting the finishing touches on that, and working on more educational resources for everyone, better content. I want to start talking a little bit about, money mindsets, investing, life insurance, credit cards, just kind of like the next step beyond tax. Been pretty much focused on taxes, bookkeeping, and LLCs for the last 5 years, and that's great. But there's a lot of things to talk about. So that's what we're kind of scheming on over here at Prisma Tax this week. Also going on, no tax on tips. The final provision came out April 13th. I'm recording this on April 20th. And I wrote a blog post for the Free Speech Coalition, and I want to read it all out to you. So I'm going to read you the blog post, talk about, some thoughts, and then some updates as it relates to tax, because it's about to be IRS Notice season, which can be a very scary time, but a lot of times it's not that bad. So starting with no tax on tips blog post. Today, the IRS published its final regulations on no tax on tips provision. If you receive tips in any capacity, it's likely you've seen headlines about this. The provision is part of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act signed in July of 2025 and is meant to benefit taxpayers who traditionally receive tipped income before December of 2024. The IRS released proposed guidance in September of 2025, took public comments, and has now finalized everything this week. I've been watching this closely since it directly affects the community I serve, and the final rules landed exactly as I feared they would. To be clear, this isn't a full exemption. It's a federal income tax deduction up to $25,000 per year in tips can be subtracted from taxable income when you file taxes. It applies to tax years 2025 through 2028 and phases out if your adjusted gross income exceeds $150,000, that's if you're single, $300,000 if you're married filing joint, and if you're married filing separately, you do not qualify at all. Taxpayers still need to pay the full 15.3% of self-employment tax, assuming that you're self-employed. You don't have to be, and potentially state tax depending on where you live. Digital creators of all kinds, influencers, streamers, podcasters, were explicitly listed under the initial Treasury tipped occupation code 209, which felt like a win for the community. That was until a coalition of conservative and Christian organizers wrote directly to Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, urging him to remove sexually explicit material, and named the OnlyFans platform specifically. Their efforts were effective. The final regulations now plainly state any amount received for pornographic activity is not a qualified tip. No acknowledgement that these are legal businesses operated by legal workers who have been paying their taxes. The same businesses who are good enough to tax are apparently not entitled to the same tax relief as everyone else. This is not a ban at the platform or individual level, but is based on the nature of the content at the time the tip is received. There is no checkbox on any 1099 to indicate content as pornographic. This means vanilla creators on any platform can still technically qualify for this deduction. If an adult creator were to claim it and be selected for an examination, a human IRS agent would need to evaluate whether the tips were connected to pornographic activity on facts and circumstances with no formal definition to guide them. This is a morality-based exclusion, and it's becoming a pattern. The states are falling in line. Alabama has a 10% tax on gross receipts from adult website content produced or sold in the state. That's been in effect since September. Pennsylvania has a bipartisan proposal for 10% tax on subscriptions and purchases from online adult content platforms that was introduced in October of 2025. And this is in addition to the 6% sales tax that's already in effect. Utah signed into law March 20th of 2026 a 2% excise tax on online pornography companies with AI-assisted enforcement. And then Florida hasn't passed anything officially yet, but the gubernatorial candidate is actively campaigning on a 50% income tax on OnlyFans creators, like the sin tax. This is a coordinated economic squeeze using tax policy, age verification, and platform liability to make adult content creation financially unsustainable without a single federal ban. However, there are opportunities for creators to maximize the deduction, but it requires intentional record keeping and understanding of the laws. Adult creators are not banned as a category of person, and the tip is tied to the content. This is advantageous for creators operating across multiple platforms and producing mixed content. If you're an adult creator who also streams on Twitch, goes live on TikTok, and is active on YouTube, you have a vanilla presence, and the tips received on those platforms are separate from anything tied to the spicy industry. It is possible to deduct the tips from a non-explicit presence. Exotic dancers are in a different position, and it's worth mentioning. They remain on the IRS official qualifying occupation list under entertainment and events, and that held through in the final regulations. The exotic dancing industry faces a different issue in that the clubs are not doing complete wage reporting, so it's difficult to prove what is income and what is a tip. From what I've seen preparing dancer tax returns, I don't anticipate clubs to report qualifying tips on a 1099 or a W-2, or really even, give out any wage documents at all. The new applicable law language in the final regulation means that the local counties could technically disqualify the tips in jurisdictions where certain conduct during performances is restricted, because everyone's like working in person if you're a dancer, but the occupational level eligibility is there. So in short, dancers are basically still in. None of this is fair or a surprise to the community. All we can do is continue to pay attention, document as much as possible, and support organizations like Free Speech Coalition who are actively fighting the legislation. If you have questions or comments, reach out to me. So, you guys, I don't think this is the last that we're going to see of tax policy being weaponized against this community or anyone else. There's a very clear pattern here. And usually these exclusions or additional taxes, like a sin tax, is for industries that are socially harmful, like tobacco, for example. There's like an additional tax on that. But my argument is TikTok could also be pretty harmful. Meta, there's like all kinds of court cases about how it's like melting people's brains and everyone's addicted. AI, don't get me wrong, I love Claudia. But there's like limited social guardrails on this. It's literally the Wild West, no tax there. Or like gaming, that's pretty much like gambling, or, Shein, which is like gamifying consumerism. I don't know. It doesn't sit well with me. Not a huge surprise though, right? but they didn't give a definition of what porn is. So where is the line between porn and art? Is it a nipple? Is it penetration? Like what? So now it's just like up to the IRS agent who would have to review your content if you were audited. It's sticky. But it's also scary. And it's also dangerous. And it's also very important that we're paying attention and keeping just super clear records of everything. And for this industry, this is also in addition to the banking discrimination, to the social media bans, which is, how everyone is driving their traffic to their pages. Like it's stacking up. So without putting like a real federal ban on spicy content in the spicy industry, they're just going to continue to make it more and more and more difficult. And this administration is in office for a couple more years. So I have a hunch this is going to continue and even potentially get more strict. Another point I would like to make is I can see a world where they start going after people who are not tax compliant, meaning like if you have an outstanding Phoenix 1099 from OnlyFans and you don't have a filed tax return, they're going to start auditing the people directly with those 1099s or their Fansly 1099s, whatever. That's how they're going to start, and they're going to blame it on tax compliance. So something to pay attention to, not a super fun conversation. I guess silver lining, you're not banned at the individual level. So if you were like diversifying your platforms, you could still have the tax savings, but the phase out is $150,000 if you're single, and a lot of people are over that. A lot of people are under it and could benefit. But it's more the principle that's, I think, what's the greater discussion here is that the precedent has been set. Like this exists now. It literally says in the IRS tax code, like no pornography. And now the states can have whatever rules they want. Florida doesn't even have state income tax. Now they want to tack on 50% tax on OnlyFans. I think it's going to lead to a mass exodus of hot girls from the state. Everyone's just going to go to Nevada, until they come up with something there. But that's the story on no tax on tips. If you're a dancer, you can still qualify. Technically, your club should be recording this on your wage document, but we have a workaround in the tax program that we can do for you. And that is only because at the highest level in the tax code, you're technically allowed to deduct your tips. So just make sure that you're doing very diligent tracking in any system that works for you, everyone across the board. And now that we are past tax season, we are in IRS notice season, state notice season. The states, forget it. I mean, California will be your literal number one pen pal if you owe them any money or are late on filing. So I just want to say, don't freak out if you see a letter in the mail from a tax agency. Usually what happens is, as someone who is self-employed, you should be making estimated tax payments throughout the year. When you don't make those payments throughout the year, penalties and interest accrue. And we go to file your taxes, sometimes the tax program just doesn't get it right. And according to the IRS or the state side, you owe more in penalties and interest. It can be a couple $100, it can be a couple $1,000. There are solutions. There is penalty abatement. We can call the IRS. There's things that you can do to handle these, but it all starts with opening the mail and not freaking out. Other notices you might get would be identity verification. There's a ton of this right now. Lots of refunds are on hold because of identity issues. A lot of e-file returns are kind of like on hold on the IRS side. There's a ton of tax fraud, so you might have to call and verify your identity or even go in person. Ew. So that could be something, but just read it. And if you are too scared to read it, then scan it to us. Send us all pages of the notice and we can look at it and let you know what the path forward is. Honestly, a lot of times it can be resolved on your own. We're happy to handle it for you if that's not something you want to get involved in, but many, many times you can handle it on your own. It's just a little scary. So that's in being reactive for taxes. Okay. The 2025 deadline has come and passed. if you filed an extension, your payment was technically still due April 15th. So that's another reason you might get a notice, because you didn't pay your full tax bill. So we can work to file your return ASAP. We are aggressively finalizing tax returns. At Prisma Tax, it is still tax season over here. We are grinding. A lot of people are behind, so we're doing multiple year catch-ups. It's just the nature of what we do. We're happy to help you and get you sorted out. If you wanted to be proactive about your tax situation, maybe you're making more money this year, maybe your tax results from last year didn't feel great when you went to pay it and you felt like there could be more tax saving opportunities, that is where tax planning throughout the year comes into play. A foundation of that is your bookkeeping. Income and expenses tracked in categories that align with the IRS, and doing that monthly. We have a spreadsheet that you can use. You can buy a spreadsheet from someone else. You can use QuickBooks. We can do your bookkeeping, whatever. But that's going to be step one to optimizing your tax situation. We can't make a recommendation on how much you should pay in for an estimate if we don't know how much you're making. We can't project your income and see if you should be an S corporation and help you determine what your W-2 salary should be. Like, there's a lot of things that we can do, but it's based on the activity and the data of what's actually happening, especially in this industry where things can change. You know, you're not making $10K a month flat. Sometimes you make 5, sometimes you make 15, sometimes you make 80 if you go viral on TikTok. Sometimes you make 2 if you can't work. Like, it just kind of varies and ebbs and flows, and that's something that we understand. Tax planning, now is the time for all that. Your next estimated tax payment for 2026 is due June 15th, then September 15th, then January 15th. So we can handle everything for you on a monthly basis. If you just want to run your business, set it and forget it, we can do your bookkeeping, your estimated tax payments. We can batch in your tax preparation. You can have access to the team. Otherwise, we're closing the tax portal after we finish your taxes because it costs us money to keep it open all year. And you can have calls with me. You can also always book a call with me. There's a link in my bio for a consultation. So just a little note on where things stand now that we're right after tax season. I will be at XBiz Miami. Can't wait. Missed it last year. I got a keratin treatment ahead of it, so my hair is like ready for the humidity. Bring it on. Hope to see you guys there. I will also be at Dominatrix Con Los Angeles at the end of May. I'm giving a presentation. And I will also be in Las Vegas at the end of May, really for no reason. You know, I feel like I just land in Vegas and I just put out the hot girl smoke signal and adventure finds me. Business finds me, clients find me. So if you're in Vegas, find me. I'm also going to Germany next week, but that will, no business will be conducted there. Just, I go see my German friends. Haven't been there in 3 years, but I'll still be around. But yeah, that's the story, you guys. Thanks so much for listening. If you have any questions, you can always email me, Katherine@theonlyconsultant.com, and we'll see you next time. And that's a wrap on another episode of Cash Content and Chaos. I am Katherine Studley. If you got something out of today, share it, follow the show, leave a review. If you need help with your taxes or bookkeeping, you can find me as well. Everything is linked in the show notes. I will see you next time. Stay sexy.